What's going on, my people? This is Blanche Eden, your host for Black Trending News. So today we're going to be talking about probation. Okay, probation is a very big business. And a lot of times when somebody goes on probation, it's under a private probation company. I'm going to go over how they make money and how they are, quote, trapping people in the justice system to make money. But exactly what probation is, it's a period of supervision over an offender ordered by the court instead of serving time in prison. In some jurisdictions, the term probation applies only to community sentences, such as suspended sentences. In others, probation also includes supervision of those conditionally released from prison on parole. An offender on probation is ordered to follow certain conditions set forth by the court, often under the supervision of a probation officer. During the period of probation, an offender faces the threat of being incarcerated if found breaking the rules set by the court or probation officer. So there's different types of supervision. There's intensive probation, home detention, GPS monitoring, computer management. These are highly intrusive forms of probation in which the offender is very closely monitored. It is common for violent crimes, higher ranking gang members, habitual offenders, and sex offenders to be supervised at this level. Some jurisdictions require offenders under such supervision to waive their constitutional rights under the Fourth Amendment regarding search and seizure, and such probationers may be subject to unannounced home or workplace visits, surveillance, and the use of electronic monitoring or satellite tracking. Under terms of this kind of probation, a client may not change their living address and must stay at the address that is known to probation. So as you can see, there's a lot of ways. There's unsupervised probation, there's informal supervision, there's a lot, shock probation. My goodness. That's a program that gives the sentencing judge the power to reconsider an original jail sentence. So, they hope that shocks the criminal into changing their behavior. Shock probation can be used only between a specific period of 30 to 120 days after the original sentence and is not available in all states. So as you can see, they go to the extent to make sure this person is, quote, free, but they have to watch this person heavily. But there's a loophole to this, all right? So this is a story about Marietta Connor. The 63-year-old assistant minister had just pled guilty to failing to yield a pedestrian, a criminal misdemeanor in Georgia, and did not have enough money to pay her a $140 fine. The judge ordered that she be put on probation, but instead of county probation, Connor was assigned a private probation company supposed to mimic normal court probation. Meet with her once a month through a probation officer, collect payments, and confirm her work and address. In the end, the company sapped Connor of well over the original amount of the fine and even dangled an arrest warrant over her head when it erroneously claimed she had missed a payment. Connor was lucky. She knew someone at the Southern Center for Human Rights who helped her escape the trap the correctional corporation tried to put her in. Yet for hundreds of thousands of other probation through a private company, the experience routinely entails prolonged harassment, indebtedness, and even imprisonment, sometimes all with the blessing of a judge. In 2012, 1 in every 35 American adults was trapped in the criminal justice system. 1 in 35. Who knows if it's higher now or if it's lower, right? Either way, that's pretty bad. The surging number of people whose lives necessitate constant surveillance and management has exploded the coffers of state and federal budgets. And rather than reform heavy-handed laws to ease this burden on public funds, elected leaders have contracted incarceration services out to companies with a moneyed interest in jailing more Americans. Okay. The private prison industry has stoked the outrage of progressives and civil libertarians for years, as has the practice of prosecutors pushing plea bargains with heavy parole, but an equally dangerous phenomenon in the rise of private probation businesses across the country. Since the 1970s, the private probation industry has expanded into at least 20 states, most concentrated in the South. And nearly all of its companies are entirely supported by the fees paid to them by the probationers they, quote, serve. In the last few years, many of these businesses have been given more power to pursue and imprison probationers, playing a starring role in what one federal judge called a judicially sanctioned extortion racket. When someone is convicted of a misdemeanor crime, he or she is often placed on probation by a judge, either in lieu of minor prison time or as part of a payment plan to pay off court fines levied for his charge. Traditionally, the purpose of probation has been to facilitate the rehabilitation of the probationer through constant contact with the representative of the court, a probation officer. Although this concept may be farcical in an age when an adult can be placed under community supervision for jaywalking, with privatized supervision, the offenders are required to report monthly to a contractor acting in the same capacity as a probation officer, and they must also pay a monthly fee to the company on top of the fines they owe the court. The distinction between fee and fine is important, as noted by The Economist. It is through fees that private probation companies can afford to pay the salaries of their staff. A report from the Criminal Justice Review explained that private agencies rely on the probationers paying a supervision fee to remain solvent. Solvency, however, is hardly a concern for many of these corporations, some of which have amassed tens of millions of dollars annually off the fees they charge probationers. Tens of millions of dollars annually. One such company is Sentinel Offender Services, whose combined operations in 4 different states brought in $30 million in 2009. My God, I couldn't even... $30 million in 2009, according to an investigation by NBC. The company has faced many legal challenges on the grounds that its employees demand payment for fees from poor probationers and that issue arrest warrants when they cannot pay, without consideration for their financial situation. Marietta Connor, the impoverished pastor, was under the supervision of Sentinel. Although a 1983 federal ruling said that probationers cannot be jailed for being indigent, Sentinel has regularly issued arrest warrants for probationers delinquent on their payments and has even extended the probationary sentences of thousands illegally in order to wrest more money from them. Sentinel has terrorized so many lives, a Georgia court recently ruled, that the company might have to refund thousands of payments to former probationers who had the unfortunate luck to be supervised by a company that links its probation officers' performance evaluations to the amount of money collected from probationers. Oh, okay. So the more money you collect, the better you're doing, right? So that's why they're trying to collect so much money. They want more money, more money, more money. And that's according to a 2010 ACLU report. Sentinel is just one in a vanguard of 34 probation corporations in Georgia alone, just in Georgia. Okay? 34 in Georgia alone, not including the other 19 states that they have these private companies in. Okay? Pushing to have more power to hunt down delinquent probationers. A new bill up for a vote in Georgia's House of Representatives, greased for quick passage by funds from industry lobbyists, would give private probation officers increased immunity from liability and grant them more discretion to extend the person's probation, and by extension, prolong a probationer's payment period. People, you gotta hear this. This is insane. Okay, so, the House of Representatives, who is supposed to be for the people, right, are doing this. And it's not helping the people. It's taking more money from them, and it's making it more aggressive, a more aggressive act. Some courts have actually been complicit in the racket. A circuit court in Alabama ruled in 2012 that the local municipal judiciary in Harpersville, Alabama, had operated debtors' prisons, together with the private probation firm Judicial Correctional Services, by turning over poor misdemeanor defendants to JCS and then allowing the company to fleece them for every cent they had. In the event that the probationers couldn't pay their monthly fees to the company, as was the case for many probationers in the nation's fourth poorest state. Wonder why it's poor? This is why it's poor. This is one of the main reasons why it's poor, right? They were thrown in jail without a trial at the behest of JCS and under the blessing of the Harpersville court, who would then doom already indigent defendants to an inescapable pit of debt by piling even more fines and fees. The presiding judge who ruled against Harpersville was scandalized so deeply by the JCS judiciary collision that he accused the local court of violating almost every safeguard afforded by the United States Constitution and the laws of the state of Alabama. Meanwhile, JCS continues to operate in 69 cities throughout 4 different states. Now, it does not take a legal expert to discern how for-profit correctional services threaten the freedom of Americans. Private probationary companies exist only as long as there is a steady supply of probationers from whom to extract payment. And these companies grow only if the number of people on probation grows. As evidence furthered by the case of prison contractors, some of which have compelled state governors to keep prisons 90% full. A privatized correctional model maintains the American system of mass incarceration by further building it into an industry. Have a good night.